Thursday morning, a week ago. Tanks of the Turkish army on the outskirts of Famagusta are about to complete their victory in Cyprus. The Geneva peace talks have collapsed. The Turks have lost patience, have given up words in favour of war. They will take what they want of Cyprus by force of arms. Royal Fusiliers at the British military base of Turkey watched the Turks with anxiety. The British base borders Famagusta. The Turks are unsure of their position. The British are unsure of the Turks. If the tanks seek to pass through the British base on their way to Famagusta, there'll be a confrontation. There is no communication between the two sides. Suddenly, without warning, the Turkish army opens fire on the base. No British soldier is wounded, and so diplomacy intervenes. It's mutually agreed that the shelling of the base by the Turks is an accident of war. The Turkish army, carefully skirting British territory, is allowed to move unmolested on Famagusta, the last stronghold of the Greeks. The Turks face only token resistance from the local headquarters of the Greek Cypriot National Guard. The tanks shell the barracks. The result was as it has been throughout the advance. With immensely superior weapons, they overwhelm the Greek opposition, while the British look on. The Turks complete their conquest in Cyprus with an avalanche of shells which destroy deserted buildings. The port of Famagusta is in Turkish hands. Its buildings smoke from the bombs of the Turkish Air Force, which has obliterated what remained of the Greek resistance. For the Turks, it's been an easy war to win. Abandoning its strongholds, the last ragged battalion of the Greek Cypriot army flees from the Turks. The Greeks seek to escape through the British Decalia base, but the British, mindful of trigger-happy tanks, refuse to let them pass.
If you come through, they might start shooting.
I know.
I'm sorry, but...
I know that. Maybe... Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on. Tell Zero that this battalion is moving around.
The defeat for these Greek Cypriots is a humiliation brought on them by their own commanders, the Greek officers from the mainland who led the island's army, who had tried to murder Makarios and replace him with a thug called Samson. Their wild dream of a Cyprus ruled from Greece provoked the Turkish invasion, led to this catastrophe. The Greeks had no hope of victory. They fought from pride, knowing they would lose. As the Greeks fled, the Turkish rode rejoicing into the old city of Famagusta. This had been a Turkish enclave surrounded by Greeks who outnumbered the Turks by 3-1. Now, not only the old city, but the entire port of Famagusta is in Turkish hands. When the Turkish army first invaded the island, the Turkish Cypriots of Famagusta came under siege from the Greeks. They were bombarded by artillery, cut off from the outside world, short of food and water. Now they were free, freed by the Turkish army. Generals of the Turkish High Command, their victory complete, arrived in triumph to acknowledge the greetings of those they had saved. For the Turks of Cyprus, these were the heroes from the motherland who had come to their rescue. The army's arrival in Famagusta was the climax of their advance, an advance they justified because of the suffering of their besieged people at the hands of the Greeks. The victory secured for the Turks a slice of Cyprus, which they now regard as their own. It's no wonder that the Turks rejoice, no wonder that the siege is but a bad memory from a past which will never return.
In the last half an hour, just before the Turkish tanks arrived, I counted 68 mortars at the Famagusta gate, by the hospital.
I looked to my watch, it was exactly 5 o'clock. And for the 50 minutes, I counted 125 Mortons had been shelled to Old City. Do you imagine? 125 Mortons to be shelled to Famagusta.
Well, just before the tanks arrived, we had a very heavy shelling by mortars and long-range guns, and everybody was very upset. But when suddenly we heard the word, the tanks are here, and everybody started rushing out, the first thing we could think of was the safety of the women and children in case any more shells fell. But I'm afraid there was no stopping anyone. They just poured out of the shelters. They were all in the streets. In fact, everyone was crying, you know. They had tears in their eyes. And they just started climbing over the tanks and the armored cars. It was one big mass of happiness, ecstasy and relief, really.
And what was your feeling when you heard the tanks?
I say you, I lost everything in my house. I was very unhappy, you know. I was unhappy. But when I saw the tanks, I forget my unhappiness. I was very happy because my life was saved, my children's life was saved, and my people, I mean the Turks, was all safe. I'm very happy, of course, because they saved ourselves.
I know war is a very bad thing for everybody. You know, I don't envy being anyone on the receiving end of a war. It is terrible for everyone. Everybody loses something, somebody. But then freedoms are never given. You have to take them. I'm afraid we had to do that. Only Turkey could have helped us.
Beyond the walls of the old Turkish city, Famagusta is silent. All this belonged to the Greeks. Famagusta was the tourist resort of the island, the major port. Much of the wealth of Greek Cyprus was based here. Last weekend, the Greeks fled in panic before the Turkish tanks. Now, the town is deserted. No voice is heard, no child plays, no door slams. It is as if the Greek Cypriot world has come to an end. The last to escape the Turkish advance were the old, the weak and the sick. In terrified ones and twos, the Greeks scurried for safety, taking with them nothing but their fear of the Turk. The Greeks have been reared on myths born out of centuries of enmity between the two races. For these people, the Turkish soldier is a barbarian. They have abandoned all that they have, and they won't return while the Turks are there.
Do you come from a village now under control
Yes.
by the Turkish? Would you go back there or not?
I don't want to go back. Nobody wants to go back.
And we want to
With
go
this
back
gathering.
to our village, but not under the Turkish control. We want to live free as we left before.
We hate these fucking people anyway. Hate them. Since we are so small boys, because our grandfathers from our grandfathers, I mean, years ago, they do that to this island and to Greece too.
You mean you've hated them forever, for a long, long time?
Yeah.
That's the...
Yeah.
The struggle between the two people
Yes,
has always been
yes,
there.
because they are hard people. They are not same the Greek Cypriots,
If
which
you
they like
live-
everybody.
If the Turkish authorities said that it would be perfectly all right for you to live there under their jurisdiction, their control, would you be happy about that?
No, because the Turkish are the more barbar people that there is in the world. So nobody.
Barbarous, you mean?
Yes, barbarous people who is in this world. So it is somewhat difficult to live under the Turkish authority.
You wouldn't do that?
No,
You would prefer, even if you had to lose your house, to live in the Greek side?
we prefer to be dead than to live under the Turkish authority.
You know how many £1,000 I left in my house?
How many?
I left my tractor, I left my combine, I left my wheat and barley, which is all my things, and I left them.
You have nothing to go back to now.
No, I don't think I could find back. Couldn't find anything.
What do you
Sorry.
think you will do now?
Kill myself. Kill myself. Yes, better to kill myself. If I go back to find, my house.
But why do you think that they will have destroyed things? There's no evidence that they have looted on a wide scale.
Look that! What's that?
In
Who's done
Famagusta,
that?
in Famagusta, the bombing. It seems that every Greek Cypriot is on the move. Refugees, confused and numbed, in constant flight, heading nowhere but away from the Turks. It is thought that 200,000 people are now refugees. 200,000. One person in every 3 on the island. The Greeks have fled from dozens of small towns and villages in the way of the Turkish tanks. Families sit waiting for they know not what. They've lost the Cyprus they thought was theirs. They all have fathers or sons or brothers who fought against the Turks. It's feared that nearly 5,000 people have died in the fighting. Some bear it in silence, others cannot. It is inconceivable that they can live like this for long, yet no alternative is in sight. There is no hope, only the knowledge of loss.
The tanks came into our village at about 2 o'clock, and when we heard the noise, all the people tried to leave the village. We were so scared of those tanks, and we didn't take anything with us, but we tried to leave the village as soon as possible.
Have you got nothing with you?
No, we didn't take anything with us. When we heard the tanks, we left immediately.
And came here.
Yeah.
What did you leave behind in the village?
We left everything, our house, our property, everything. We didn't take anything with us.
The scale of the Greek disaster is now sinking in. There are sudden, irrational outbursts of despair. This woman fears that her son is dead, thinks that we are Americans, blames us for letting the Turks invade, and wants the crowd to drive us away.
Hungary with Americans, and she thinks that you are from America, and she What has happened? Is she has she lost part of her family?
Yes, she's my mother.
She's your mother.
Yeah, it's my.
What has happened?
My other brother is
Not found it yet.
He's not. We don't found yet.
He has been in the National Guard.
Yes.
And he has disappeared.
Yeah. We don't know exactly where he is now.
And she thinks.
Yeah, he's killed. We don't.
Okay. She thinks that we are Americans and.
Yeah. Yes.
And she blames. Does everyone blame the Americans at the moment?
Everyone. He doesn't like Americans. Nobody likes Americans, you know.
Will you go back, do you think?
We don't know exactly.
Would you go back while the Turkish people control that area?
No one wants to go there.
Not at all?
No, because maybe killed. They killed a very old man.
They killed about 200 people in my village.
And they come and take all the...
Turkish from villages around my village go to our village and take
the cows, the pigs, and everything they want.
Everything they find there.
Do you think that the Greek people will try and get that land back, or will they accept that the Turkish people are in control there?
No.
What will you do?
Young people, they want to take the land back.
You will fight, you mean?
Yeah.
The Turkish army were expected to annex 1/3 of the island, but it has even more, for it's advanced so far south that it now holds nearly 40% of Cyprus. As a result, the Turks hold more than 2/3 of the island's wealth.
They moved from Piroi to Athens yesterday. Now, from their forces in Piroi, they branched off this way.
Glafkos Clerides, leader of the Greek Cypriots, knows that his people face catastrophe. Now urging the world to act, he claims that the Turkish have not yet finished their work.
Yes.
And what is the situation then, so far as you're concerned?
We'll have to fight in the hills.
He won't negotiate till the Turks retreat. He's in a desperate position, but he remains defiant.
I think it is going to get much worse. We have not seen yet the worst of this tragedy. My clear assessment of the situation is that the Turkish forces which landed in Cyprus are now putting away all the camouflage as to the purpose for which they landed, and they are advancing despite repeated ceasefires with an intention to occupy the entire territory of the Republic of Cyprus.
You mean to turn Cyprus into part of Turkey?
To turn Cyprus in the 20th century to a Turkish colony and to subjugate the 80% of the Greek population to the 18% of the Turkish Cypriot population of the island.
If the Turks do virtually take over the whole island, there is nothing that you can do about it, is there, sir?
Militarily, they can occupy the whole of Cyprus. But they're not going to occupy it through a capitulation of ours. We will fight. And there will come a time when Mr. Echevit's armor car will not be so usable, because certainly we will fight in the hills.
You're talking about a guerrilla warfare?
I am talking about a long, protracted warfare which will wage from the hills.
So, are you saying, therefore, that it is quite impossible, unless they retreat enormously, to have any kind of peaceful solution, that the war goes on?
That is exactly what I am saying. And what I am accusing them, and with some arguments to support my accusation, is that if they do not retreat, they intend to leave for the Greek Cypriots such an unproductive area that eventually, in order to survive, they will have gradually to emigrate, and therefore they will turn Cyprus into a Turkish island.
What are your strongest feelings at the moment?
At the moment, my strongest feeling is one of disgust. Disgust for those countries which could have prevented the Turkish invasion in Cyprus, and instead of that, they are sitting, satisfying themselves by just passing resolutions.
Greece has said that there will be no talking towards a peaceful solution, and you have said there will be no talking toward a peaceful solution at gunpoint, which means that the Turks have to retreat before you will talk. That means in practice, doesn't it, that you are not going to talk at all, because the Turks are clearly not going to retreat.
That is exactly how the position is going to be. If Turkey thinks that we are going to go to talk merely to sign a surrender and to accept the Turkish claims in the way in which they were put at Geneva, this is the proposals. They are not negotiable. You either accept them or you reject them. Then obviously we are not going to sit at a table to legalize what Turkey has brought about by illegal actions.
Does that mean that whatever the physical suffering that the Greek people have to bear, that you will fight them in the hills rather than that?
Whatever the physical suffering, we have no alternative but to fight. There are certain commodities in life which, even to secure physical comfort, do not constitute negotiable commodities. And the freedom of one's people and the freedom of one's land is not a negotiable commodity.
60 miles west along the coast from the battlefield of Famagusta, at the opposite end of the island, are other refugees. Here are the Turks, 7,000 men, women and children who fled from their enemy, the Greeks. A month ago, the Greeks surrounded the small isolated villages of the Turkish community. On the arrival of the Turkish army in Cyprus, there was fighting. Those Turks who lived far from the invasion front had no army to defend them. They were outnumbered. Many were captured. The rest fled to safety in a British base. Like the Greek refugees, they have nothing. Their homes have been looted, their people killed. Yet now they're free from the fear that has always been with them. For the first time in their lives, they have hope. A Turkish victory offers them security. They hope that the Greek Cypriots will accept the new order. Each of them is waiting for the peace which would allow them to trek north into a Turkish Cyprus.
I don't care. I got about 2 houses and quite a few acres of land, but I don't give a damn to it. Sorry about that. I would prefer to live as long as I'll be secured by the Turks.
Would you again now live under Greek administration?
Not at all. Definitely not.
I mean, it's no good to live with these Greek people. We can't live with them because we know at the end, still they will find some way to kill even our brothers or our sisters. Once we save our soils, my suggestion is to go and live where the Turkish administration is, under the protection of Turkish army.
Even if that means mass migration backwards and forwards across the land of Greek and Turks?
Well, still, my opinion doesn't change.
I think everybody here, if you ask them one by one, and you will find many people here who are well off, that they will not care about their land, and they will run to the place to the north where the Turkish administration is.
What happens if the Greeks do not accept the existence of that border and decide to fight for a long time, guerrilla warfare or whatever that may be, in order to gain back that land?
Well, I think what Clearidis, the acting president, said, that if Turkey decides to move a third time, that they will go to the mountains and fight again just what they have done in '55 to English people. But I think Turkey will not give them the chance.
How so? How do you mean?
Well, you don't expect Turkey to give them the chance to kill innocent people, just going like guerrillas, putting bombs in the cars or into the houses or just killing innocent people, I don't think she will give them the chance.
But you can't stop guerrilla war. No Greek will accept the humiliation of August 1974. Hate and fear now rule Cyprus. The island faces indefinite war across a perpetual divide. In one way only are Greek and Turk alike. They both now belong to a nation of refugees.